Tuja Bihari Tuja Bihari Gentlemen, Mr. Papa, the Paragraph Victorious, so there is up in his divine grace, they speak back to them, so Mr. Papa Ki is confounder Charter Shila Papa Ki, Anantakoti Vaishnav Ki, Namachari Shila Hardas Thakur Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakum Radhakum Giri Govardhan Ki, Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki, Ganga Mai Ki, Yamuna Mai Ki, Bhakti Devi Ki, Tulasi Devi Ki, Shri Hari Ram Sankirtan Ki, Kantaraj Bhagavatam Ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki, Nithai Gaur Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Guru, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. So, Hare Krishna, Prabhus. I'm actually really, really fortunate to have the opportunity to speak some Katha on Lord Rama. Actually, when I first moved into the temple, my birthday was on Navami, and so that's actually what somebody had written me a card, said, "Happy birthday, and you're so fortunate you get to celebrate your birthday on the same day as Lord Ram, who is the perfect king, husband, the perfect example for all of us." So at the time, I didn't know anything about Lord Rama. So I thought, well, why don't I study and find out? And so actually, in my study of the Ramayana, I've found out that there's so many lessons that we can learn from the Ramayana in general that can help us in our bhakti. Actually, the Ramayana is so long that I think all of us could probably give a class on the Ramayana for about a week or so, and none of us would get the same class. So what I speak on today, is going to be probably different than what Dero speaks on tonight. And if somebody were to give class on Lord Ram tomorrow, it would be totally different as well. But anyway, so my plan today is I'll just discuss the pastimes, the pastime of Lord Ram, and highlight some lessons that we can learn from this pastime that will really help us in our bhakti. So Lord Ram, he appeared in the dynasty of Ikshvaku. His father was King Dasarath, and Dasarath ruled the kingdom for 160,000 years. And he had 4 wives. He had 3 wives, Kushaya, Kaikeya, and Sumitra. And and then he had 4 sons, Lord Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrugna. So very little is actually known about Lord Rama's pastimes as a child, but we know about his later pastimes. And whenever Krishna appears, his associates always appear. He never comes alone. He comes with his entourage. And so also Sita appeared as the daughter of King Janaka. So Sita was so powerful that at 5 years old, there was this bow, and it was the same bow that Lord Ram had to lift and string to marry Mother Sita. And this bow was so big and powerful that it took 800,000 men to lift it, and they could only take 1 step, and then they would have to put it down. But Sita Devi, as a child of about 5 or 6 years old, okay. Yeah. But Sita Devi is a child of about 5 or 6 years old. She was 6 actually when she married Lord Ram. Yeah, Lord Ram is 12. And so, when she was about 5, she was picking some flowers, and it's described that with her left hand, she just picked up this bow and moved it so she could pick some flowers. So Sita is actually very, very powerful. And her father, King Janaka, he saw this and he said, "Oh," he's kind of worried. He said, "We will have to marry her off to a man who can lift this bow, because otherwise she's so strong that if we marry her to anyone else, when she embraces them, she will crush them." So therefore, at Sita Devi's Swayambara, Lord Ram came, and at the time his guru, I think it was the Vishwamrita, told him, go see the bow over there. And so Lord Ram ended up in the Swayambara of Sita, and he goes and he lifts the bow and he strings it very easily. And so, so Sita, she's all ready to marry him, and she comes with a garland to give to Ram, but Ram is taller and Sita's kind of short, So Rama being a Kshatriya, Kshatriyas really don't bow down to anyone. So Sita's coming up to him with a garland, and she's thinking, well, he's too tall, I can't reach. And then Ram's kind of standing there, because Kshatriyas generally don't bow. And then so what happens is Lakshman, reading the situation, because Lakshman is actually a incarnation of Balaram. He's the original guru. He comes and he bows down to Lord Ram. And then Lord Ram, seeing this, he goes and he gives his blessings to Lakshman. And when he gives his blessings to Lakshman, he bows down. Like, yes. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Ram, Sita, Hanuman, Lakshman. Right there. So, tell her the order. Oh, okay. They're not in order. There's Hanuman, a little bit. There's Lakshman. You got it? Yeah, that's that. This is a class about. And so Lakshman comes and he bows down, and when he bows down, that's when Lord Ram also bends over to give his blessings to Lakshman. And when he bends over, that's when Sita puts the garland around Lord Ram. So from this, we actually learn that one has to be humble when they're approaching the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that humility is what attracts Krishna. When one takes that step towards Krishna in humility, Krishna responds and takes that step towards the devotee. So Ram blesses Lakshman, and Sita garlands him, and then they're going to get married. And then also it's described in Vedic culture that the wife will put the garland around the husband will put the garland around their wife. But the interesting thing was that Ram was so captivated by Sita's beauty that he was seeing Sita everywhere. So they had to specifically put Sita right there in front of Ram so he wouldn't garland the wrong person. So anyway, so they get married and everything is very happy. And Dasarath gets ready to crown Ram as his successor. So they're going to have a big coronation. And but what happens is that one of Dasarath's wives, Kaikeyi, she got polluted by bad association. And one of her maidservants started to tell her, your husband, he's going to make Ram king. And, you will be out. You should get your husband to make Bharat king. And the interesting thing about this part of the pastime is that Kaikeyi and Ram, they had a very sweet, loving relationship. Ram looked at her like his mother. Everything was very good between them. There was no evidence at all that Lord Ram would put her out or would maintain her. So everything was all good. But Kaikeyi allowed this situation to pollute her mind. So you ever notice how sometimes things can be going all good, but you get like somebody that's very negative that starts planting things in your mind, and it disturbs. You can kind of disturb our bhakti. I remember One time I was being told by somebody, oh, this person actually really doesn't like you secretly. They have something against you. And I actually believed that for years. So I was walking on eggshells around this person. I didn't know what they had against me, but oh yeah, they kind of prefer if you weren't around, whatever. And so then later, this person left. And this went on for about 5 years. And finally, when I sat down and had a conversation with the supposed person that had something against me, I found out that it wasn't true at all. And the things that I were told they said about, they never said at all. They're like, no, I love you. I think you're great. But this other person had their own ambitions. So and so anyway, with Kage, she allowed this association to pollute her consciousness. And therefore, this caused an event that disrupted everything. Kage had these two boons from her husband, that's right, because she had saved him in battle. And so this evil-minded personality that's polluting the mind of Kage tells her, why don't you use your two boons and make your husband, make Bart king, and send Ram to the forest. So she discusses this with King Dasra, and he's very distraught over this. But once the treasury gives a boon, they have to follow through. So Kaikeyi tells Dasra, okay, I want you to banish Ram to the forest and make Bart king. And so later, Kaikeyi calls Lord Ram. And Lord Ram comes in and he bows down and pays his obeisance to Mother Kaikeyi. Yes, mother, how can I serve you? Kaikeyi says, your father would like that you go to the forest, you banish to the forest, and Bart becomes the king. And Ram looks at her and says, why does my father have to say, just you saying alone, I would go to the forest. And I would make Bart king. So he had that much love for Kaikeyi. And at the time that this is happening, Bart, he's actually not in the kingdom. He's off somewhere else. And so Ram goes to the forest, but when actually Bart comes back, he finds out what his mother has done. And he's not happy about it. And she's saying, I just did this, for you. This is what we kind of call misplaced compassion in devotional service. When we do something and we don't actually have the blessings of other personalities, we do necessarily, what we think is best by our own mind. And it looks good, but it's not actually good. So this is why we always have to take good advice, always have good association around us. Because we see that Bart actually, he wasn't happy about this incident. And people in the kingdom, not everybody in the kingdom supported Bart. And some people actually thought Bart was involved in this whole plot. So it also shows that sometimes in devotional service, we can be in a situation where people think things about us that aren't necessarily true. And yet we have to serve in that situation. So Bart he had to become king. He tries to convince Ram to come back after King Dasarath dies. But Ram says, Ram is so, because of how things are, he always wants to do the correct thing. He said, no, it was the desire that I be banished to the forest. So therefore, you rule the kingdom. Even though Lord Ram, he could have said, well, actually, my father's technically passed away. And so he could have come back, and many of the citizens would have loved for him to come back. But no, because there was a desire that he be banished to the forest, Ram stayed. He said, okay, I will follow this. I will follow this desire of Kaikeyi. And when my father said to banish me to the forest, I will follow it. But actually, there's a backstory. And you want to know the backstory. So Sita is Lakshmi. And we know that Ram, is originally Vishnu. So Lakshmi is always serving Vishnu, and Vishnu is lying down on the bed of Ananta Shesh. And she's massaging his feet. And Lakshmi at one point looks at her husband and says, I love serving you more than anything. And all my desires are fulfilled by serving you. But I have just one desire. So he said, Vishnu, being the very nice husband that he is, says, yes, darling, what is it? I am serving you, but we're never actually alone. And he said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Because I met the sheikh. He's always, he's always here with his thousands of hoods looking." He said, "Don't worry. When we go down to incarnate when we go down to the material world and have our pastimes as Ram and Sita, we'll go to the forest and we can be alone." So therefore, so you can see that whenever these things happen in Lord Krishna's pastimes, never just one thing is happening at a time. There's external reasons and there's internal reasons. Just like we have the external reasons for Lord Chaitanya's appearance and the internal reasons for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. So when Ram is preparing to go to the forest, originally he wants Sita to stay in the kingdom because he says, okay, the forest is not such a good place for a princess. And generally, Kshatriya princesses, when they grow up in a palace. There's a lot of opulence. They have everything they need. They have servants. So you can imagine, just going to the forest, living off of fruits and roots, not having nice clothes, anything that the princess is used to. But Sita, her love for Ram is so great, and Lakshman's love for Ram is so great that they can't bear this separation from Lord Ram. They say, to have all this opulence without Lord Rama is nothing. We would rather go to the forest and have Ram than stay here and have all this opulence. So it's the exact opposite of how the conditioned soul thinks. Conditioned souls often, Prabhupada describes that we want the kingdom of God without God. If everything is going good, we have all the opulence in the world, there's this tendency to forget about God. It's generally when somebody is going through intense suffering that they're like, oh God, please help me, please arrange this situation. But by the example of Lakshman and Sita, we can see how a devotee actually thinks. But he actually thinks, okay, all this opulence can go to hell. Just let me have the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the same way we saw with Arjuna. Arjuna told Krishna, I don't care about having your army that defeated so many personalities, very, very powerful army. I just want you, Krishna. So Lakshman and Sita, they're also in this mood. And they just want Lord Ram. So they start off on their journey, and they travel to several places in the forest. And there's a big section of the Ramayana that talks about where they go and the different people that they meet along the way. I'll just highlight a little bit of it. So, and sometime in the forest, they meet Guya. He joins them. And when they're walking along in the forest, Lakshman, he's serving Ram by moving all the thorns out of the way. Lakshman is setting the example as the perfect servant. So he's moving all the thorns and things that they could step on out of the way. Meanwhile, Lakshman's getting all the thorns in his feet, but he doesn't want Sita and Ram to step on these thorns. And so at one point in the forest, Guya, he tells Ram and Sita, you should lie down on the grass and take some rest. And Lakshman, he doesn't like this. He said, Sita and Ram, Ram is king and Sita, she is supposed to be queen. How can they lie down on this grass and take rest? So then Lakshman therefore takes the vow, okay, I will not sleep. Yeah, once again, setting this perfect example of a servant. I will not sleep. And he stays up during the night and he watches for different rakshasas and things that could attack Ram and Sita. So, like the disciple always stands ready to serve the guru, whatever the guru might need at a moment's notice. There's the examples of Prabhupada. Sometimes he would call disciples in the middle of the night from their sleep. Come here. Disciple would come, and there's these like sweet stories like that. So in the same way, Lakshman, he's sitting there, ready to serve Ram, ready to serve Sita, ready to protect them from everything. So then, from this point, they go to a place called Chitakut. And in Chitakut, this is a section of Ramayana where Sita and Ram, they're actually living very peacefully. Things are kind of nice. They're living a life of aesthetics. They're eating these fruits and roots, and just kind of having a good time hanging out in the forest. But citizens find out that Lord Ram is in this place, and so they start going to visit him because everybody misses Lord Ram, and he doesn't like this so much. So therefore, him and Sita, they leave and they go to Dangakaranya. And this is where Lord Ram runs into the sages. And the sages see Lord Ram. And when they see Lord Ram, they're attracted to him. And they want to enjoy with him in conjugal ras, like Krishna with the gopis. But in this incarnation, Lord Rama tells them, I've taken a vow to only accept one wife. So at this time, it's not possible. But as we know, Krishna is fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. So he tells them, when I incarnate as Krishna, then, you can also incarnate and you can enjoy with me in that way. So these sages, by their service and by their desire, they got the ability to become gopis and Krishna Lila. So they're in Dangakaranya, and in this forest, Ram kills 40,000 demons, including he fights. This is the place where he fights with Maricha, and it's described in his fight with Maricha. He throws Maricha a distance of 800,000 kilometers, I believe it was described. And where Maricha falls, therefore, later his descendants come after him in that area, and that area is now Mauritius. So the people from Mauritius said that they're descendants from Maricha. So at this point, Ravana, he sends Surapaka, his sister, to Ram. And she sees Ram, and she's very attracted to Lord Ram, and she wants to marry Ram. And Ram once again tells her, I've taken a vow to only accept one wife in this life, but why don't you marry my brother Lakshman? He's a lot better than me. And Lakshman's like, no, why don't you marry Lord Ram? And this demon, she's very envious of Sita. Kind of like, the conditioned soul is envious of what's Krishna's and wants to take it and enjoy it for themselves, or they want to mistreat it. So therefore she attacks Sita, and therefore Lakshman cuts off her nose and ears. And at this point she goes back to Ravana crying. And then Ravana goes to Maricha and tells Maricha, okay, you help me. I want to kidnap Sita. Help me in this arrangement. And Maricha, he's already had experience fighting with Lord Ram. He says, this is not such a good idea. But Ravana, he tells Maricha, okay, well, either you help me with this and you have a chance to live, or I will kill you. So Maricha, fearing for his life, he says, okay, I will take the chance to live. He doesn't understand, doesn't have the proper intelligence to understand that if one surrenders to Lord Rama, one gets all protection. But his life is so dear to him that he decides, okay, I'll take my chances. So he takes his form as a golden deer. And when Sita and Ram are hanging out, one day she sees this deer, and she says, oh, Ram, this deer is so beautiful. No ordinary deer. Very, very beautiful deer. And she wants it as a pet. So she tells Ram, go get the deer for me. And so Ram goes after the deer and leaves Lakshman to watch over her. But as we know, Ravana comes and he disguises himself as a Brahmana. And therefore he takes Sita. And when he takes Sita, Jatayu comes. Jatayu is very old. And he tries to fight Ravana. He says, what are you doing taking Sita? But Ravana is an interesting personality. Ravana, he kind of thought, you read the Ramayana and you think Ravana thinks he's, what we say in modern terms, God's gift to women. Because Ravana had, taken so many men's wives. And Ravana is described as being extremely good looking. In every single play you see about the Ramayana, they always make Ravana to be this fat Indian dude with a mustache. They always create that appearance. They make him always look very ugly. But actually, Ravana was drop dead gorgeous. And he had these 10 heads, but he only used these 10 heads when he was fighting a battle. So he kidnapped Sita, because he's had so many women. So he thinks, I'm also going to make Sita mine. But Ravana was actually cursed that he couldn't force Sita to be his because he had once upon a time he had tried to kidnap this guy's wife. He had raped her, and she goes to her husband and explains. So therefore, Ravana gets cursed. You'll never be able to touch a woman without her consent again. He has this curse, so you'll die. So, but anyway, Ravana thinks that he's going to try to convince Sita to come over to him. So this is the thing, the living entity, they think they can actually take what's Christian and enjoy it, but it's not the real thing. And Lord Chaitanya explains this. When he's on his South Indian tour, he runs into a Brahmana, that's a devotee of Sita and Ram. And he explains to him, because the Ravana is actually kind of disturbed over Ravana taking Sita. And, since Krishna, he knows everything, he explains the backstory of the pastime. Don't worry, Sita actually did not get kidnapped. It was the illusory form. So in this world, we try to take something we think we're going to enjoy it, but it's just illusory. That enjoyment that we get, it often comes back to bite us, especially when we try to take what is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and use it without engaging it in His service. Things often go bad, or they don't go how we expect them to go. So for Ravana, this is also going to get pretty bad. But before that, Lord Ram, he wanders in the forest, pretending not to know where Sita is. He wanders around. And this is because even though Krishna knows everything, he gives his devotees and he gives other living entities the opportunity to engage in his service. And he wants to give them the credit. So, and he's, like I mentioned before, he's also doing more than one thing at a time. So when Lord Ram is wandering in the forest, pretending like he doesn't know where to go, he's all distraught. He's telling Lakshman, where is Sita? We have to find her. If I can't find Sita, I will give up my very life at this moment. He's, just this really soft story. And then he wanders upon this mountain that was actually previously a Gandharva, and he got cursed to become a mountain. So Lord Ram liberates this mountain. And therefore, this personality that was in the form of a mountain tells Lord Ram and Lakshman, go find Sugriva and go find Hanuman. So eventually they find Sugriva, and Sugriva is the king of the monkey army, and they find Hanuman. And Sugriva and Lord Rama talk. And Sugriva is telling Ram, first he's making a business deal with Lord Ram. He tells Lord Ram, Bali, he's taken my kingdom, he's kidnapped my wife, so many of these things have happened. So I'll make a deal with you. You help me get all this back, and I will help you find Sita. So Lord Ram agrees. And so after this, Lord Rama keeps up with his end of the deal. He gets Sugriva's kingdom back, his wife, and all this. But what happens often when a person gets what they want from God? They then forget. So Sugriva forgot about his end of the, he forgot about his end of the deal. He goes back and he's enjoying, he's got his wife back. But what happens when the living entity forgets? Krishna sends Guru. Krishna sends a Guru to remind us, okay, what are you doing in this material world? You waste your time trying to enjoy this, trying to enjoy that. This is your real purpose, to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in this way, Lakshman goes, because Lakshman's Guru, he goes and he reminds Sugriva, you're actually supposed to be helping Lord Ram get back Sita. Sugriva remembers, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be helping Lord Ram. So they go, they shake hands, they make up, and Sugriva sends his monkey army out to various locations. And then they find the brother of Jatayu. And the brother of Jatayu informs them, Ravana, he's ruling Lanka. He's there. You go there. And so, setting the example of the king, Ravana, he worships Varuna. Because Krishna, he's sometimes he's, like I said before, he's wanting to give credit to his devotees for things. And we see in the example with Sugriva, even though Sugriva, kind of forgot about his arrangement, still Krishna didn't forget about them. And then you have personalities like Hanuman, who are always faithful, who are always faithful in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So from this we can see that the Lord wants to engage everyone. The Lord wants to have a relationship with everyone. So therefore, Lord Ram goes on the ocean and he worships Varuna. But as we know, haven't any of you heard that lecture from Indrajumna Swami about Lord Ram, when Lord Ram goes to the ocean to worship Varuna? So he goes and he's doing his puja or whatever he did for Varuna. And at first Varuna doesn't come. Because and Indrajumna Swami says that sometimes the demigods they get a little puffed up in their position. This is the problem when one has opulence. So Lord Ram gets angry and finally Varuna appears and tells him, okay, construct a bridge. And this is the really amazing part of the story. So the monkey army, they start throwing these rocks in the water to construct this bridge, but the rocks are sinking. So therefore, they take the rocks and they write the name of Ram on these rocks. And when they write the name of Ram on these rocks, the rocks start to float. So Lord Ram sees this, and he's kind of amazed. And he wants to show us the power of his holy name. So he says, I'm Lord Ram, so I don't need to put my name on a rock because I'm Ram himself. So at night, Lord Ram goes, and he throws a rock in the ocean without writing his name on it. The rock sinks. Hanuman is watching this. So Hanuman comes and says, I saw that. Lord Ram says, because Lord Ram says, Hanuman, tell me, why did my rock not float? And he said, without your holy name, one cannot float in this material world. The living entity has the holy name of Lord Ram. They can float very easily in this material world, but without your holy name, they will sink. So Hanuman, then describes these stories about the holy name of Lord Ram, and Lord Ram is very pleased. So therefore, they finish making this bridge, and actually, you can still see this bridge on satellite. Apparently, at least the devotees have shown me pictures. They say, "Oh, this is Lord Ram's bridge to Lanka." So. And then once they finish the bridge, then Hanuman goes over and he takes Lord Ram's ring with him. He goes over to Lanka and he finds Sita. And then he gets kidnapped. And then Prabhupada would often say that Hanuman is an example of how to use anger in devotional service. Because Hanuman at once, they light his tail on fire when they kidnap him, Ravana and his, king. And then Hanuman takes this and he burns down, he sets fire to Lanka. So these different things, like anger and whatnot, they can be used in devotional service. But the Nectar of Instruction tells us that we should be very willing to tolerate offenses to ourselves. But we should become very angry when we see that the Lord and his devotees are being offended. So we also see another example of this in Krishna Lila, when Shishupal in the sacrificial arena, he's he's hurling all these insults at Krishna. And Bhishma and Arjuna and all the Pandava dynasty, there are Bhima and Arjuna and all of them, they actually want to kill him. They're very angry. They can't stand to hear these insults against Krishna. And in the same way, we also see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, when Lord Chaitanya came and defended Lord Nityananda. So this is actually the proper use of anger. Proper use of anger in devotional service is that when the Lord and his devotees are being offended, we use this anger. So then after Hanuman burns down Lanka, Ravana's brother, Vibhishana, he one of the things that happens is that he switches sides. But before he switches sides, there's a backstory that he writes Lord Ram's name on the chamber, on the different walls of the palace. Because Vibhishana, he was actually thinking, Ravana, you should give back Sita to Lord Ram. Lord Ram's the supreme personality of Godhead. So he writes Lord Ram's name on the walls of on the walls of the palace. And Ravana sees this. And he said, Vibhishana, why have you written the name of my enemy here? And Vibhishana, being a Kshatriya, being very diplomatic, he says, oh, that's not the name of your enemy. Ra means for like Ravana, and Ma means for Mandarini, your wife. So therefore, I'm glorifying you and your wife. So we can kind of see in this example that sometimes in our preaching, we have to be very, a little bit diplomatic. What are you guys doing? We're just having a little small fireworks show. It's just like that. We do all these things. I was just trying to, attract people to devotional service. I remember one time we went to a vegan fest, and we took ladus with us. We made ladus, but the problem was that we put butter in the ladus. So when people came around, we would ask them individually, are you vegan or not? And they would say whether or not they consume dairy. So if they consume dairy, we give them ladus. But when the organizers came around, they were very strict. Oh, everything has to be, vegan. So we asked, are these vegan? Yeah, for sure they're vegan. So, there's different tactics like this that one might use for preaching to help people become devotees. Like I heard this one story of this one book distributor. He was distributing books, and he went up to someone and he said, wouldn't you agree? Sex life is the highest pleasure in the material world. Yeah, man. Here, read about it. And he distributed books. So, sometimes these tactics might be there, but we had to be very careful how we do this. So anyway, Vibhishana, he does this, and then Ravana, he's so proud of himself that he says everyone should have this on their walls. So throughout the kingdom, everybody had Ram written all over their walls. So indirectly, there's this glorification of Lord Ram going on. Kind of like sometimes if we can't get people to say the holy name, you'll get them to say something else. So my friend one time, she was trying to get somebody to say Nitai. They didn't want to say it. They said, say tiny 10 times. Tiny. And they never got them to say the holy name. So anyway, so then Hanuman comes back. Vibhishana switches sides. And when Vibhishana switches sides, people are kind of skeptical because he's the brother of Ravana. But he goes and he surrenders to Lord Ram. And this is when Lord Ram says, if one at once surrenders unto me, he says, I will give them all protection. So he accepts Vibhishana. And he crowns Vibhishana as king of Lanka, actually before he kills Ravana. So Lord Ram, he goes over, and there's this big battle between Ram and between Ravana. And Ram is trying to do everything to kill Ravana. There's always this dramatic part, in battle scenes. You often see this in the movies where the hero goes and he's trying to kill the enemy, but he doesn't kill them right away. There's this whole fight. So at first, Ram's trying to kill Ravana in all these different ways, and he can't figure it out. And finally, he shoots him right through the heart. Because first he was trying to cut off his heads, but then his heads were coming back. So then he shoots him right in the heart. And when he shoots him right in the heart, it's described that lust, anger, greed, all of these things start to come out. So when the arrow of the Lord enters into our heart, it brings out all lust, all anger, all greed, all things that are bad for our bhakti. So therefore, Ravana falls. And then Lord Ram says, okay, now my Ravana is done being my enemy. So he has a proper funeral ceremony for Ravana. Vibhishana becomes the king, and then he goes to get Sita. But then this is the part of the story that gets very interesting. When Sita comes before Lord Ram tells her, Sita, actually, I just rescued you from my own ego because Ravana kidnapped you. And, because I'm a Kshatriya, I couldn't stand that. So I had to go get you back. But actually, you've been with this other guy. So, I don't really want you anymore. Kind of like messing with her like that. Kind of like Krishna messes with the Rukmini when he wants to see her, agitated. So sometimes Krishna will do this. He'll create this separation and he'll make it long for you. And Sita, she kind of gets, really upset by this. She says, okay, I'm going to, give up my life. And so to test her purity. And Krishna does these different things to glorify the devotion of his devotees. He asked Lakshman to build a fire. Sita says, well, if you won't accept me, I'll just enter into the fire. And then Lord Ram says, Lakshman, okay, you build a fire. And at the point of this story, I'm thinking, Ram, like, come on. This is so mean. And, but you see, he's showing the glory of how devoted Sita is to him. And he's wanting to show how pure Sita actually is. So Lakshman doesn't want to do it. He doesn't want to build the fire, but he does it anyway. So when Sita goes to enter into the fire, Agni appears and he says, actually, I cannot burn Sita. Agni, the fire god, he says, I cannot burn Sita. Sita is more pure than I am. So therefore, Sita is glorified in this way. You'll see how pure she is, how chaste she is. And then they return to Ayodhya to rule. And after a short time, when they return to Ayodhya, Sita finds out that she's pregnant. So she goes in and she tells Lord Ram, I'm pregnant. And Lord Ram's really ecstatic. So he tells Sita, is there any desire you have that I haven't fulfilled? Because one of the reasons that the Lord appears, is he's fulfilling the desires of his devotees for having this sweet lila. And Sita tells Ram, actually, I want to go see the sages in this forest. And Lord Ram says, okay, well, within a short time, I'll send you. You'll go there. So later, Lord Ram is doing his duties as the king, and at this time, the kings really cared what people thought of them back in the day. So they would go around incognito to see what people were saying about them. So Lord Ram was going around incognito to see what the citizens were saying about him. And he came along this couple fighting. And his husband was saying to his wife, because the wife had been away from the home, oh, Ram might have taken Sita back after she had been with another man, but I will not take you back. I'm not like Ram. And then Ram realized, very heartbreakingly, that he had to banish Sita. Because if he didn't banish Sita, then what would happen is that kings in the future would use this as an example to keep, prostitute-like women in their chambers. People like, women that are of bad character, they can make excuses like this. And so Lord Ram is trying to set the example of a perfect king. And at the same time, he's fulfilling Sita's desire to go see the sages. So this thing is simultaneously happening. So he tells Lakshman, you take Sita to the forest of the sages and leave her there. And Lakshman doesn't want to do it because he doesn't want to separate Sita and Ram. So at this point, he tells Ram, when we come back again to the world, I'm coming as the older brother. So you have to listen to me. Because I've had to listen to you this whole entire time, and you had me do these things. And so next time, I'm coming as the older brother. So he takes Sita to the forest, and she's there with Valmiki and all the other sages. And she has 2 twins, Lavanga. And then this is where Sita and Ram enact their pastimes of separation. Ram is constantly thinking of Sita. Sita is constantly thinking of Ram. So this is how it is in the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This described that here in the material world, separation is the greatest lamentation. But in the spiritual world, this separation increases one's ecstasy, increases one's love. So you'll see if you study Krishna's pastimes, you'll see that they're coming together and they're separating. So there's three things. There's the meeting together, and then there's the separation after meeting. And it's described that the separation after meeting promotes a higher ecstasy. Kind of like when you have a very very dear friend you're together and you separate and you're thinking of them all the time. And then you come together again and there's a greater ecstasy because you've been separated. You've had this experience? Yeah. So at this point, Sita and Ram are separated. And then at some point, Lord Ram decides that he wants to bring Sita back to the kingdom after Lavanga and Kush are born. We've been separated long enough. But see, the thing is, when people, whenever there's a king, people have different opinions about things. And there were still some people that thought that, Ram shouldn't take Sita back because, she was with Ravana. It's like this. But Ram wants to prove Sita's chastity again. So he calls Sita. He wants Sita to come back to the kingdom. And Sita's coming in. And she comes up, and her and Ram, they have this moment where they're together again after being separated for so long. But then Sita says to Bhumi Devi, if I have always been chaste to Lord Ram, if I have always been faithful to Lord Ram, open up and take me in, so that I will not have to see, these envious people can see. And so therefore, Bhumi Devi comes and takes Sita on her lap, and then takes Sita into the earth. And then Lord Ram at this moment, he gets actually very upset and he breaks character for a little bit in his Leela. And he tells Bhumi Devi, how could you take Sita away from me? You bring Sita back or I will kill you this instant. And then Lord Rama has to come. And then he tells Lord Ram, hey, Ram, remember, you're just a pastime. You and Sita can never be separated. You're always together. And your pastimes are almost finished as this incarnation anyway. And then you and Sita will be back as Vishnu and Lakshmi. And so he calms him down. But it shows also too the devotion that Sita had to Lord Ram. That still, she didn't want anybody to think anything bad about Lord Ram. So therefore, she actually doesn't come back to the kingdom. And therefore, Ram is able to show how he's actually the perfect king, the ideal king, and also he's showing how he's the ideal husband. So we see so many things are happening at once. There's externally and there's internally. Externally, Lord Ram is setting the example as the perfect king. Internally, he's increasing his love between him and Sita by this separation and by this meeting together. So therefore, Lord Ram stays and rules a little bit longer. And then ultimately, his pastimes wrap up, as Krishna tends to do, wraps up his pastimes, and then he goes back to the spiritual world. And to this day, even in India, people are saying, oh, we want a kingdom just like Lord Ram. Because when Lord Ram was king, when him and Sita were there in Ayodhya, there was no hunger, there was no thirst. All the citizens were perfectly satisfied. Everything was very peaceful in this kingdom of Lord Ram. And people were devoted to Lord Ram, and Lord Ram was devoted to his citizens. It's described that he treated them exactly like a father treats his child. So Krishna comes and he shows us different things. And then one of the things that Ram is showing us here is, one, how to be a proper ruler, but also two, he's enacting these pastimes to attract all the living entities back to him. And so by these pastimes, we can actually learn how to be devoted to Krishna. We see Lakshman's devotion to the Lord. We see Sita's devotion to the Lord. We see Hanuman's devotion to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But also we see how forgiving and how compassionate the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. How he is with Sugriva. When Sugriva forgets about their ordeal, Lord Ram, forgives, okay, that's all right, come back. And, he again engages in the devotional service of Lord Ram. We see with Vibhishana, even though he had this association with Ravana, still Lord Ram took him. So actually it really shows us that it doesn't matter, what time and what position we take birth in. There's no impediment to devotional service. If we want Krishna, Krishna will always accept us. So the only thing really that we have to give to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is our desire. And that's ultimately what he wants. He wants our desire to serve him. So that's just a quick summary of the Ramayana. There are many pastimes I could have gone into, but I can't possibly tell it all in an hour. So, Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhu.
Thank you. That was really fantastic. All your Lord Ram's pastimes. I wanted to share this nice
thing from the Navami Mahatmya, which is one of my favorite books,
Yes.
that Lord Ram was also in Mayapur.
Oh, yeah.
Lord Ram and Sita, they spent time in a cottage in Mayapur. And so this is Lord Nityananda describing Lord Ram in Mayapur. He said, under a huge banyan tree, Sri Ramachandra, Sita Devi, and Lakshman lived in a cottage. Seeing the effulgence of this place, Sri Rama smiled, feeling great joy in his heart. Sita Devi, seeing this, asked the Lord what was the reason for his happiness. The Lord then revealed to her the confidential topic of Gauranga. He explained to Sita Devi that in the Kali Yuga he will appear in the golden yellow form of Gauranga and enjoy the Vidya Ras or mellow of education. And then leaving his mother and wife, take sannyas and proceed to Puri, preaching love of God. Sri Sita Devi then asked the Lord, why should he marry and leave his family to take sannyas? What happiness he got by making his devotees sour. The Lord then revealed the mellow happiness achieved by the Vipralamba Bhav, the mellow of separation. It also describes that Sita Devi was Vishnu Priya.
Mm-hmm.
So also I wanted to also say that, thing that I was observing that Sita Devi, she peered from the earth, right?
Mm.
And we can take it as kind of a lesson that, the on one level, that earth is our mother, earth is an expansion of Mother Sita, of ultimately Lakshmi Devi.
Yes.
And that the Ravanas of the world are ravaging, our Mother Earth. That because they want to use Mother Earth's resources without using them in the service of Lord Rama. So we see that Ravana-like mentality so prevalent in this desire to, use the resources of Mother Earth, Mother Sita, And so I just find it kind of a parallel that, where we see so many Ravanas in the world like that are, essentially raping Mother Earth, and rather than using her in the service of Lord Rama. But the simple solution is there, that if we just use the resources of the earth in the service of the Lord, then everything is put back to normal. That's Raja, right? Raja Ram. So just want to share that.
There's a little bit of Ravana too in all of us.
Yeah. More than a little bit in me.
Yeah, and that's what you can really see, reading the Ramayana and looking at the character of Ravana. We all have this, lust, anger, greed, and then also Ravana. He even appeared pious because he was a devotee of Lord Shiva. Yeah, and he was actually born in a Ravana family. So but still, just despite all that. He wanted to enjoy what was Lord Ram's. He wanted to take that for himself. So yeah, there's a lot that we can learn studying the Ramayana and studying his character.
Yeah. I got a lot of Ravana in me, but I don't got the handsome part.
And actually, his 10 heads represent something, and I was trying to find that, but I couldn't find. I couldn't find it in like anything Shastric, like that I could really see was a bona fide source online, and the Ramayan's too long for me to find that specific section. But his 10 heads all mean something. But I think one of them is described that he had, all the knowledge of the Vedas really, but he didn't have this aspect of devotional service. So you can be so educated and you can be so intelligent. You can see that many of the demons are actually, very intelligent in terms of the Vedas. But, it really can be the cause of your downfall later if you don't realize what the purpose of all that is. So, are there any other pastimes you guys want to share about Lord Ram or that you like specifically? What inspires you? Yeah, you go ahead, Prabhu.
No one's sharing. I just want to say that my favorite pastime for the Ramayana is the pastime of Jatayu.
Jatayu, yeah.
Yeah, I remember I wasn't even like a devotee yet, but I heard that pastime. I mean, I was like into the devotional. I wasn't like practicing Krishna consciousness seriously, but I just heard that pastime told by Radhanath Swami. That and hearing the Lord's love for Jatayu is so Jatayu just he couldn't even win, yet still the Lord blessed him so nicely, and Jatayu left the world in Lord Ram's arms. I often just think of that, we're in the fight with Maya, but, we may lose sometimes, but at the same time, the fight itself is very dear. We don't give up and we continue our devotional service.
Yeah, it's a beautiful point. And also along the lines with Desire, he was old, so he kind of knew he didn't really stand a chance in defeating Ravana. But still, he wanted to serve Lord Ram. He wanted to give his everything, even if it meant that he wouldn't be able to defeat Ravana on his own. So it's also another really amazing example of how just that complete surrender to the Lord. All right, Rubus. Well, that's all. I think it's about 9 o'clock, so we'll stop here. Jai Shri Ram.
Think about that.